to all my friends, also to those we won't be seeing again, to those I knew and those I still adore, and I want to see once more. I just pray that you will.
Hey guys, this is Val from valkayink. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are working on a figure kit that I've been thinking about ever since it first premiered on E2046. This is the Count from Gankutsuo. This is a simple kit with only 6 parts, but the difficult part will be painting everything with such small pieces and so many minor details, so I will be hand painting this particular kit. I could tell the inspiration for this kit right away, and it was this particular image of the Count, so I'll be taking my inspiration from this image. However, when you look at the Count animated, he does have a flat black suit. I have a different preference in mind for him. See, I'm a big fan of his illustrated look with this navy blue for his suit, so I will be making that controversial change along with a few others along the way for this particular kit. I want it to be opulent, just like the Count and the rest of the show. After thoroughly cleaning the kit, we move on to actually cleaning up, sanding, and pinning the rest of these pieces, and of course removing all of those pour tabs. The only oversanding that I encountered was on the seam line on this chair, so I just broke out my tools and decided to clean up all of that line, sand it back, and make everything even before continuing with this process. Pinning is going to be pretty easy, as I just have to pin the sockets for his arms. However, I am going to be using 2 pins for each of these arms, just because these parts aren't sitting naturally with each other. To make the pins align perfectly with the socket, I am using the sticky tack method, where you put a little piece of sticky tack into the socket, line up your pieces gently, find those spots where the pins need to go, and then drill accordingly so that everything lines up with your 2 parts. With everything aligned and pinned, I am going to fill in any gaps I have on the figure with polyester putty, which is also very useful for any rough areas that need extra putty or extra surface work. It's time for a dry fit of everything together now that all of the cleanup and prep is done, and however, I did notice a couple of things I need to add, and I do want to change about this particular kit. For one, he fits perfectly in his chair, however, his foot is a little bit lower than where it's supposed to rest, pushing the whole figure up. I can fix this with either heat bending and placing the leg back, or I can go ahead and go through with those modifications I was talking about earlier. I noticed in the original inspiration photo that the chair did have little paw feet, and I kind of felt like I wanted to try recreating them. This is a big risk, and normally I don't alter my figures too much, but I really wanted to go off on this one. After doing some measuring and digging through some extra parts, I found finished nails and beads that would give me the desired height I was looking for. And basically, I want to have little metal bottoms on the feet so that I can add decorations to the front of the bead chair feet. Wow, that's not a sentence I was expecting to say today. With the addition of these new feet, now when I place the Count in his seat, his feet don't push up off the ground and it's level with the figure. The other thing I noticed is I don't have an easy way to attach the hand. When the hand is already on, I can't slip in the shoulder socket, so I'm going to have to improvise, and this means I'm going to have to use magnets instead of relying on pins and putty. So basically, I went ahead and put one magnet in the sleeve portion of this arm, nice and centered, and then after measuring where the other side would be, I just took my Dremel tool and found the appropriate size and drilled out the section for the other side of the magnet. Okay, this part is very important. When you're installing magnets into these kits, you have to make sure the polarity is correct, otherwise the magnet will not work. So testing a couple of times to make sure I had the right side in, I slipped it into my carved out groove, and then I decided to take a cap that was lying nearby just to make sure I had it pressed in as much as possible and as aligned with the rest of the resin as possible so I could do a test fit before gluing in the magnets. And here it is working. I can't believe how wonderfully this magnet is holding this hand in place. The legs had the same issue as that hand and arm, so I inserted my magnets the same way, and not trusting that 2 would do the job, I used 3, and that kept everything really stable. Since I'm modifying this chair anyway, I kind of want to glitz it up, and that means including gold buttons in the tufting. For each of the new buttons to sit and fit properly, I'm going to drill out the old resin buttons from this tufting. Priming is pretty standard. All I did was spray all of my pieces and let them air dry. Of course, I don't have a ventilated space, so I had to take these to the backyard instead. Why does he look like how I feel when I wake up in the morning? This first round of primer showed some flashing and some rough spots that I needed to sand out, so of course I did that and did another round of priming before I finally got to move on to paints. Speaking of paints, I actually had to buy some new colors for this kit in particular. I'm most excited to use this metallic cobalt and this ice snow blue. I really want to capture those gold lines that you see around the flames and the cuffs in the animation. So of course I'm going to break out my old gold paint and hand brush in all of those lines. And yeah, this was a little bit tedious, and what I should have done was clean up all of my excess that was on the edges. At the time I figured it would be fine since I'm painting in all of the other parts, and when hand painting you need 2 coats on everything anyway. But hindsight is 20/20, and I just wanted to make sure I got the gold wells filled in as much as possible on all of these crevices that I was painting at the time. I think the most difficult part of this particular project was going in and painting all of the cuffs. Now, there's really not much to do other than roll up your sleeves, load up the tiniest brushes you have, and actually start painting. I know all of these sections are going to need 2 coats to hide any paint lines and to make sure the coverage is as even as possible. I'm going in with the anime colors using straight yellow and straight red for each of these portions, and I'm starting off with the yellow in the middle so it mimics what the prototype figure had as well. I actually really enjoy hand painting, and I do a lot of it for commissions that I do outside of my YouTube stuff. But yeah, I'm not sure if you guys would ever want to see non-anime related things, but I do those occasionally from time to time. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more of that in the future. Of course, I set up to paint the next cuff, and then without warning, my camera died. Oh, I can't believe this happened. And then I recorded painting all of the red with the camera not focused at all. So that's great. Just know that it looked the same and it also took a long time. I decided I wanted to hand paint the flame effect that happens in the red in the middle of the flame sleeves, so I loaded my brush with a tiny bit of red and mostly yellow on just the tip, and line brushed in as much of a gradient of between red and yellow as I could to mimic the texture that he has on his sleeves in the show. Same yellow and red paint technique on the flame portion, and now a shot of the cuff when I had it finally finished. Also a little bit of gold on his cuff link as well. Why do these sleeves look good in white? And now for the first appearance of that metallic cobalt blue. Basically, in order to paint in the rest of the sleeve, I'm going to do edge work on all of the flames just around the other side of those gold indents and fill in the blue that I want. And of course, this will be getting a second layer of paint as well. I want the chair to mimic what it has in the prototype version as well as what you see in most red leather wingback chairs. But I'm going to be starting from the darkest base color of a dark maroon and then working my color layers on top of that to a lighter shade of red, basically with a lot of dry brushing. While that chair dries, I'm going to start on the main body. Basically what I want to do is start with that metallic blue on all of the jacket. It's the largest portion to hand paint, and I want to make sure I have as much of the edges clean as possible. Plus anything that builds up onto the hair I can paint over or mix in with the texture, and then anything that I paint on the hair that spills onto the suit I can cover up with the second coat of that blue metallic paint. Now, you could mask off as much of the face, hair, ascot, and details as you want on the figure and spray, which would make a lot of sense, but for me, it felt like too much work masking for something that I can easily hand paint my way across. I absolutely love the way this metallic cobalt looks. It's just beautiful when it's first applied. I actually purchased these paints from a local hobby store that I was able to walk to in my neighborhood, which felt great. And it was a pleasure to finally work with these paints. All I did was thin them down a little bit with water, just enough so that it could glide over the parts of the figure, but not runny enough to pool or cause puddles. Basically, this is the easiest way to use your model paints, and you will, of course, have to do a second coat because with a thinned model paint, there will be some patchy parts, but I promise it'll look like a better, cleaner, brush-free finish in the end. Going back to the chair, this is what it would look like if you just wanted to go with the base red, which looks gorgeous by the way. However, I do think I want to go sicko mode and do a whole bunch of gold and other little details. For the feet, I'm going to do something a little unconventional. Basically, I want to mimic those big clawed paws that you see on some carved furniture, and to make that as easy as possible, I'm going to be using some of my foam clay in yellow and making little toe beans and then squishing them together onto the foot before I add in the claws. The nice part about this foam clay is that it is sticky, lightweight, dries quickly, and it takes paint very well. The downside to this foam clay is that it is very unforgiving once it starts drying, and you have to work very fast. I woke up feeling feisty and decided I did actually want to go full gold on the outside edges of the chair, just like it had in the original inspiration art. So I'm going to do that with a lot of gold paint and the addition of a lot of nail stickers that I will eventually paint gold on top as well.
Floor and columns are gold. The man has expensive tastes.
After hours of digging through my nail sticker collection and layering up sticker after sticker onto the top and edges of the chair, I think I finally have something that mimics the imagery in the original inspiration photo, while also still maintaining the chair that was made by the original sculptor. I went ahead and added in studs off of camera and a little crown on top, and I really love how it looks all holographic like this, but we have to stick to the plan and go ahead and fill in everything so it all becomes one gold cohesive piece on this chair. And now we come to the most difficult portion on the figure, which will be the skin, the hair, the eyes, and the lilac ascot that the Count wears. Basically, I need to layer up a watercolor effect on the hair that will complement both the navy color I chose, as well as match the anime as close as possible. And of course, I can't forget about his red and golden hazel eyes. I'm actually really impressed with this ice blue. The first coat went on basically transparent, but ended up working out wonderfully for shading all of the bright white gloves and shirt cuffs that the Count has, as well as underneath his bright white collar. However, for his skin tone, I am actually working on the third layer here to make it as even and dark as possible before I go in with any of my pastel shadings after a matte coat on the final painted portions. For the Count's hair, I mixed up a color that would be the lightest tone you see in his hair. Basically, I'm going to be working from light to dark, giving his hair a full coat of the lightest tone, shading it, and then working my texture in on top, gradually fading it to a darker color every single time, and then sealing it with matte sealer. In order to achieve the watercolor effect on his hair, I thinned out a darker version of the original light hair color, and with light dabs of the paintbrush, I go back in with various cotton swabs to dab and create the watercolor texture. I'm doing this portion by portion so that it doesn't drip overly on any part, so I can work quickly on a section before moving on to the next before it can dry fully, and basically doing this piece by piece across the entire head and with darker and darker colors each round until I get the tone I want in the end, all of which will be shaded with pastel shading on top of that in the end. Alright, the final steps. This included painting in the eyelashes, the eyebrows, and then painting in the red and golden hazel on the raised parts of the eyes that were part of the original sculpt. Once I have those fully painted, I can go back in and gloss them. Then I can do my final pastel paint on the ascot before I can finally call this count complete.